In 1905, it was known as the game of the century. The two best teams in the world playing for the first time ever. In 2025, it's known as the 3 p.m. kickoff. Very much not the two best teams in the world playing at the minute. Two teams with fan bases are pretty anxious and nervous and a bit all over the place. And New Zealand, weird fact out of this game, right? Feels like, from kind of the rounds on social media and listening to fans and reading stuff, New Zealand won, 52 points to 26? Feels like Welsh fans are happier than the Kiwis.
Yeah, I think realistically as Welsh fans, this is as good as we could have hoped for, if not better.
This was Wales' best performance since the World Cup.
Yeah, I think it was. And obviously the bar isn't particularly high with
They've
that.
won 2 games since then, both of them against Japan.
But if we reevaluate all of the losses since the World Cup like we did in that video before, this might be right up there.
We'll get into this in a minute, but I think this was the first time I've looked at Wales and gone, I see the project.
Yeah.
I see where they're going, what they're doing. They're heading somewhere since that last World Cup game, since Argentina in the World Cup.
Yeah. Of course, 4 tries,
Yep.
which is huge against the All Blacks. Record number of tries that Wales has scored against the All Blacks, including in wins back in the day, back in the 1950s and long before that. A hat-trick for Tom Rogers, which is crazy. The first man to score a hat-trick against the All Blacks in 21 years. It's Andre Joubert for South Africa, which is just unprecedented. And one of 4 men in history to do it. The fact that Tom Rogers' name on there, as a Welsh fan, is hilarious. The fact it's him rather than like a Shane Williams or a George North or someone like that in years gone by.
What a stat, what a moment for him.
Brilliant.
Like, what a claim to fame for him.
For the guy. That's
and
amazing.
the first Welsh player, male or female, to ever score a hat-trick against New Zealand.
Yeah.
Which is crazy as well.
So cool.
Incredible.
I'm delighted for
him. Yeah.
Brilliant 55 minutes he had on Saturday. And
the best game of his international career so far.
As an international winger, other than, I guess, beating the All Blacks / Springboks or winning a big trophy.
Yeah, the World Cup Six Nations.
That's probably the best thing you can do in international rugby.
Yeah.
Is score a hat-trick against the All Blacks. That's just incredible.
It's amazing. And all 3 of those tries incredibly well taken.
Yeah.
None of them were simple walk-ins. All of them required him to do work, even if he was taking it, just finishing the tries, none of them were individual efforts. Like the pick-up off the ground, the step to score the hat-trick try, all brilliantly taken.
There's something about this performance from Wales where I often feel bad if I kind of hog talking about Wales too much instead of their opposition, because it's the team that I normally support. But like, if this was Georgia or Japan or something like that, I would be talking about, it felt like a vintage Tier 2 performance from a World Cup against a big dog. This from Wales. Because they managed to really stand up for themselves and make the All Blacks sweat a little bit.
This has been the worst Welsh team, at least in the professional era.
Yep.
Arguably, when you look at the losing streak and their record, win-loss record, the worst of all time. But definitely the worst of the last 25, 30 years.
Yep.
It felt like any Welsh team over the last few years, right? And Tandy has very quickly got the Welsh team back to being basically where they were, like, late. If that performance happened, late PVAC era, you wouldn't bat an eyelid.
Yeah.
You know, when you had the last remains of Alan Wynne-Jones, Dan Biggar, etc., that kind of generation of players all still playing. Faletau obviously still going, but wasn't here. If you had those players still playing and they put in that performance identical, it would feel the same. Yeah. It feels like in 3 weeks, Steve Tandy has rebooted us back to where we were back in about 2022. And he's undone a lot of the damage. And I can look at this performance, and we'll get into it in a minute, and see what he's building. Yeah. And he said what he wanted this autumn was for Welsh fans to look at the team and see the identity he's building. And for the first time in a very long time, you felt like the Principality is the best stadium in the world. And you got a bit of that against Japan. You know, there were big swaves at the last section where the crowd was properly behind them. People were on edge, people were nervous. But, you know, that Argentina game, the atmosphere was shit. Yeah. And, there's been plenty of games like that because people know Wales are going to get battered. And because it's felt like Wales are... Now, Sam Warburton used the phrase repeatedly, Wales are kind of thrown in the towel in games. I don't think it's that. I think Wales have just hit the point where they can't continue to compete anymore very early on. Against England, that point came around 20-odd minutes. You look at any of the games against France, again, that point came about 15 minutes. Against, Australia last year, that was 45 minutes. These points have come very early, and then Wales have shipped a lot of points. And what Tandy did successfully here was he didn't just keep us in the game. He didn't just keep Wales in the game. He didn't do it single-handedly, but what he's built managed to keep Wales not just in the game, but in with a chance of winning it through to around 59 minutes. And that is a night and day improvement when you look at Wales' performance against the top 5 nations in the world, so South Africa, England, Ireland, France and South Africa, over the last few years, since the World Cup. All of those games have been decided, other than England at Twickenham, straight after the World Cup.
Yeah.
With that one exception. And actually the Ireland game this year, which was an anomaly. You can write that game out because you had a new coach, the ultimate new coach bounce game. With those 2 exceptions, those games have been decided within half an hour, generally, right? And what we saw here was this game going to around the hour mark, to just before the hour mark.
Which is so much higher than a lot of us will have expected. And this is something we'll reevaluate further down the line, but in the immediate aftermath, when you think back to what we said before the autumn would make a successful autumn for Wales, obviously there's still the South Africa game to go, which I think we'll preview later in the week probably, but people won't expect great things of, and that's fine, because that's a different challenge. But competing with the All Blacks like that would be a huge tick. Yeah. And Steve Tandy said he wants everybody to know what kind of team Wales are going to be. And after they've scored 4 tries against the All Blacks, all scored by their wingers, that's quite an exciting thought. And obviously, there are certain aspects that feed into the defence, which we will talk about momentarily. But first, I just want to talk about some of the Welsh highlights of this game. So, the first Tom Rogers try. Obviously, this comes off Wales going for a contestable kick. Lewis Rees-Zammit does brilliantly in the air here. Again, contestable kicks have not been a strength of Wales this autumn. They've in fact been their biggest weakness. Lewis Rees-Zammit climbs in the air, manages to get this ball and gets on the front foot immediately. And what I love is Wales aren't too eager. They aren't too antsy to get into shape. Well, they can just shift the ball.
Before you get onto that, I think it's worth looking at the Welsh setup as well. That is something I've been very critical of a number of teams over this autumn. Welsh setup's great. Plumtree is there and both second rows are there. And then you look at the moment Rees-Zammit takes the ball, Adam Beard starts to bend down to get over the ruck immediately. Rees-Zammit then makes another 5 metres and he gets on there and he's straight over the top, clears well beyond the ball before any All Black can get in there. Technically, this is sealing off, this is beyond the ball.
Both teams did this all day.
Both teams, every team does this.
Every team does this.
If you do it fast enough, no referee's going to disallow it. There was recently also Ben O'Keefe talking about this, sometimes you just got to let those go because otherwise the game will be unwatchable.
Yeah. Also, if you flop off your feet, by the time the referee looks at it, thinks about it, holds the whistle towards their mouth and goes, I think that's off their feet, and blows the whistle and sticks their hand in the air, you can just pop back up, stick your studs in the floor and look like you're in a legal position. And
also, by the time Holly Davis is in a position to see it, and Holly Davis had an excellent game, by the way, which is really good, in total control the entire way through.
Agreed.
By the time she's in position to see that clean out, the ball's in Alex Mann's hands. The ball is out and away. And the work rate of Beard and Jenkins all day I thought was outstanding. I want to pick up something on Adam Beard in a moment. But I thought they were excellent and just a really clean out.
And what I like, again, you can get lost sometimes in structures and what pods people are playing in. Alex Mann is pretty much on his own here. He's pretty much isolated in a quarter of the field here. And so he ships the ball on straight away. They go 2 passes away from the contact because, as you say, Zammit having gotten up and claimed those extra 5 metres, naturally you'll concentrate around the breakdown a little bit more. When Wales have quick ball, also the threat of Thomas Williams around the breakdown is something you want to look out for. And again, what I really like is Dan Edwards as the fly half. We discussed this beforehand in the Argentina game. When Wales get into the 22, he acts as a body rather than as a brain. He likes to go as an extra man in the attack. He doesn't boss it around. That's Thomas Williams' job. He's the quarterback. He will call all the shots. And Dan Edwards joins. He goes onto the outside of Max Llewellyn.
You can see him from the distance on the wide angle. He starts really far back and he looks up. And he has a chance. He can run in and be the first receiver here. But this is the thing I really like about Dan Eds, is he thinks about the game. And you contrast it to the second Tom Rogers try, where, again, he is waiting behind the ruck, he is well back. Once Murray regathers that kick and is going forwards, he then looks up, spots, OK, where am I needed? Where can I make the biggest impact? He sees, well, Adam Beard's going to be a first receiver there, so he sprints in, takes over at first receiver, so that he can then turn the defence in. It forced Adam Beard to kind of become a spot runner. Adam Beard adjusts his line really nicely in the meantime. That skip ball comes and Llewellyn is suddenly on the outside to draw and give, and Rogers goes over in the corner. That is Dan Eds spotting that in real time and instantly taking position, going, where am I needed most? It's here. This is exactly the same. He looks up and makes the opposite decision. He looks up and goes, OK, I can come into 10, I can take over Alex Mann, but Alex Mann can throw a wide pass. He's a professional rugby player. So all we need is him to get wide. Then second guy, we've got both Hawkins and Murray. One of those will regather it and the other one will spread it out. And that means that he can then take position wider. So he just goes, I'm just going to be a rugby player. Where do we most need someone who can make an intelligent decision, which is what he's going to do?
It's the fullback channel.
Yeah, it's the fullback channel.
Because Blair Murray's gone in, he can distribute.
Yeah. So he
puts loads of trust in Murray.
And you see him do this at club level all the time with Jack Walsh coming in and being the 10. and him hitting those wider channels. And he does it beautifully. He gets on the outside, he goes to do a little hitch kick, which caused Rico Ioane to kind of step in on him and looks at him like, oh, he's going to go himself, this kind of young 10. And then bam, no, flicks out of the back. Tom Rogers, unbelievable pickup to regather.
Such a good pickup.
Yeah.
Like, again, to score tries against the All Blacks out wide, you need moments of skill like that.
Reminds me an awful lot of Dan Edwards' first season for the Ospreys. He threw one out the back for Justin Tipuric to score against Cardiff from a very similar situation. We got to a yard out from the line, just knew he was there. Ball bounced on the floor, Tipuric scores in the corner. But like, same deal of just like knowing I've got to get the ball over there, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and not caring how I do it, if it looks pretty, whatever. It's physically get the ball into the space so we got the opportunity to score.
Yeah. And once again, the theme of this is what Wales are is they're a team who look good when they're in ascendancy.
Yeah.
When they're in the 22 or just outside of the 22 and they have opportunities, they look good. Tom Rogers' third try is brilliantly taken. With Joe Hawkins sitting in the boot in behind Dan Edwards here, with a group of two forwards running hard lines off Dan Edwards, and Joe Hawkins sits really deep. He sits a lot deeper than Ben Thomas has been when playing there, which isn't a bad thing. It's just that that's the difference of them as players. You'd be surprised by that. You'd often think it's the other way around because Joe Hawkins is a much bigger, broader player, more of a ball carrier, whereas Ben Thomas is pretty much exclusively a ball player who will reluctantly carry ball if you need him to. And the seed he puts on here is absolutely brilliant. To get onto the outside of the final defender with Max Llewellyn running a beautiful overs line, similar to what we saw in New Zealand doing against England last week here, in fact, where he fades onto the outside. That's the best thing about Hawkins' ball. Once again, he is not just guiding it into the hands of Llewellyn, he's guiding it onto the outside of his hands so he can take it like that and then fade onto the ball. And then Llewellyn times this pass beautifully to get Tom Rogers to score his hat-trick try.
Yeah, it's brilliantly taken. Wales have become a team who are incredibly good in the 22. This has come out of nowhere. This is honestly the first time I've felt this way about Wales when I've seen them get into the 22 and I've gone like...
Even when we were good.
Even when this team was good, you were used to them bombing chances or taking 3-pointers because they were never going to score a try because their attack wasn't good. This has become night and day different. I think Matt Sherritt, the stuff he's implemented around the 22 has been outstanding. Some of the stuff wider out still needs some work. Definitely. But like in the 22, they're unbelievably accurate and they're excellent. And they use all of their players really smartly. Like, they're not asking Adam Beard and Dav Jenkins to carry. They're running dummy lines. They're coming in as extra distributors. They're clearing out the ball. They want the likes of Reece Carey coming in on those short lines and always running. Carey almost scores himself. That's one of the few chances the Wales did bomb in the 22. They have that one. They lose another ball. And then they lost 2 lineouts. Otherwise, they scored like 4 out of 8 times they got into 22. 2 of those they lost those at the line out, so you can kind of go like some places would count it as 6 22 entries.
Yeah.
Regardless.
And you have to give some credit to the New Zealand defence as well for holding those out.
Yeah.
Especially that Carey one.
Just like a really, really smartly worked attack. And then you back up the fact that like I feel like Tandy has got a game model, he keeps referring to this game model, in place that works, which is a lot of contestable kicks, chaos, get it to the opposite wing as we see for the Rogers first try. Try and work it to width, and then once that's working, get into 22, try and force penalties, and then you're just incredibly accurate, playing a lot more often 9 once you get into 22.
Yeah.
And this works, but the problem is Wales are so bad on the contestable kicking, and they were so much better this weekend. Like, Reece Samet was excellent in the air, Tom Rogers also really good in the air.
Yeah, really
And
solid.
then they had the setup around them much smarter, much better, which allowed them much more opportunity. The problem is they're so bad at receiving the ball that it's hard for them to then counter. If someone else hangs it on them, right, they then tend to lose the ball because Blair Murray's tailbone on the high ball and their protection for those players isn't necessarily the best. They have started implementing, they had Ollie Cracknell waiting behind there and Harry Deeves this week of like an extra
playing
player
the
there.
Position of Blair Murray's hospital pass man.
Yeah, his emotional support animal. Like,
Yes.
Yeah, like standing there in support of like, it's okay, Blair, you get the next one. It's a problem because Wales then can't implement themselves because they're allowing the opposition through continuous select Blair Murray and also the discipline. Those 2 issues prevented them getting enough opportunities to win this game. And I genuinely think, right, I think they probably still would have lost the game, but you sorted out the discipline. Tame Plumtree had an absolute mare. Alex Mann gave a couple of silly penalties early on, which is unfortunate because I thought he had a good game otherwise. He had a really good autumn.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But again, like he's one of the most penalised players in the OLC. You have to expect that a little bit when you select him. That's the trade-off for how much he plays on the edge and how much grunt he brings you. And
the fact I feel like they're building a really good kick chase game, but their kick receipt game is so poor that they're hardly able to implement it on the front foot.
Yeah.
So I look at this team, right, and I think Steve Tandy said something I really liked afterwards. He was asked, like, what's your assessment of this game? And he said, well, the thing is, we had just under 300 caps out there. They had just over 600. Like,
that's a result.
They are just further along than us.
It's a result against those guys. And they are the bloody All Blacks. They are the All Blacks.
Wales had 3 debutants. They had a fly-off winning his making his fourth start. Like, they had inexperience right throughout the team. They had a guy who hasn't played rugby in 2 years. Like, this team was not set up for beating the All Blacks, right? But I looked at this team and I went, I can see them winning this game in 3 years' time.
Yeah.
You know, which I did not think was the case a few years ago.
Sure.
Like, I was on record
I'd like
saying,
to win a game first before we beat the All Blacks.
But I wouldn't mind if the next time we beat... No, because that would mean waiting a year. But like, I wouldn't mind beating the Springboks next week. I quite enjoy it, actually.
I take your point, though.
I thought a few months ago, Wales were at the sort of, like, Wales competing with those top 5 teams was going to take 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And I now look at it and I think it might take 3.
Yeah.
And I think Steve Tandy is single-handedly, or with that group of coaches, they have multi-handedly between them, kind of half the time I think we're going to be waiting for Wales to be competing against these teams. Because I look at this particular generation of players and I go, okay, you give them a bit of time in the saddle and they will build into someone who can compete.
So, flipping onto the other side of this, looking at New Zealand, and also feeding into the not-so-good side of Welsh things.
Yeah.
There were 2 things that you brought up there. The first one I want to talk about is kicking game.
Yes.
With New Zealand, very interesting that they didn't lean really heavily into bombing Blair Murray. Even Japan lent into this.
Look, I think some Welsh fans like to bomb Blair Murray, but that was a joke. They did for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So I said this thing in the preview we did. If New Zealand play this game sensibly, if the tactics they would if they were playing South Africa or Ireland or France or whoever, they will win this game comfortably and Wales won't get a sniff.
They could have got like 70, 80 points if they did that.
Or,
if not more,
they could have had this decided and at 50 points well in advance, and Wales' tries come from, catch up at the end.
Their first possession of the second half, they went, let's just put a bomb on Blair Murray.
Yeah.
And then they didn't just go, let's just do this all day.
What I think happened here, Scott Robertson and the other coaches had clear instructions, you bomb their fullback.
Yeah.
Because
Scott Robertson, who has coached Blair Murray, by the way, when he was younger at the Crusaders.
Who, their fullback is 1 foot tall and can barely jump. So, of course, we hang bombs on him, we win them back all day. First 5 minutes of that game, they're doing it constantly, leads to the try for Caleb Clark from them constantly bombing Wales, winning a penalty, going to width. They managed to create a nice little situation where, Wales have 2 centres who've never played together. This midfield has never played together. They just force them all to change their option quite late. All they do is try and put a decision on both centres at once. So Hawkins goes, okay, I see what's happening here. I'm going to drift. Edwards has already gone, I'm going to drift. Llewellyn goes, I'm going to stand off and then readjust. There's kind of a log jam where they can't get past Llewellyn. He stops it all. The 2 centres just make different decisions and allows Ruben Love to get on the outside. Lovely line from Ruben Love. Really well-timed pass. Isolates Samet, puts Caleb Clark over in the corner. Just really nice move. They run it again later in the game and Wales just drift and cover it quite easily. And New Zealand make 5-10 metres instead of the massive break. And it just shows that Wales can adapt to situations on the fly, which is also really pleasing. But also that New Zealand had a few things that they clearly identified, right? Which is new centres of Wales, new midfield, you can target them, but also this high ball work. And then I think 10 minutes in, the players went, we're comfortable, we're going to win this game. And they just started chucking it about, and it just became we'll play it like we're playing Chile or we're playing
I think
Belgium,
there's a bit of that, yeah.
And I think it became a little bit of going away from the game plan, because then they come out for the second half, and clearly Scott Robertson's gone, lads, just bomb it on their fullback, he's well short. And they do that for a couple of minutes. Then, Wales score a try, and they kind of seemingly forget their programming, and they go back to, or they panic and they go, okay, this isn't working, and they go back to chucking it about.
Yeah, it's interesting because the All Blacks, more than any other team in world rugby, are the team who, if you give them opportunities, they will punish you. Yeah. And it is as simple as that. There's more than any other team, ever, and everybody knows this about them. If you let them into your 22, they will score points, and they'll rack them up. And realistically, there's 2 ways that they will get those opportunities easily. One of them is through discipline, through giving away penalties so they can kick into your 22 and get lineouts, an area we will talk about in a moment. Mm-hmm. And the other one is through the kicking game. It's through kicking tactics. So often that is, as you say, you can take the shortcut and you can get in the air and take advantage of someone like a Blair Murray. And the one that New Zealand prefer is to kick for length. And they lent a lot more into that. Obviously, it's something Beauden Barrett's brilliant at. He wasn't playing. Damien McKenzie came in and he stuck to playing that long kicking game.
Yeah.
As I say, it's a weird one because if this was a World Cup knockout game, you'd be viewing it a little bit differently in terms of they've not made use of Wales's biggest weakness, which isn't a weakness for the All Blacks. They've got Caleb Clark and Will Jordan,
Yeah.
who are both
Caleb
now
Clark
good
had
area
an
wingers.
exceptional game.
He was unbelievable.
Really good.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to give him his flowers, right? Because we were very critical of Caleb Clark for a while because he was positionally and in the air very bad. And now he's very, very good in those areas.
He's excellent.
He's excellent. Like, he's addressed every weakness in his game.
Yeah.
And he's become a...
Defensively really solid too.
Yeah. He's become the player people were saying he was a few years ago. And now he's sorted out all his problems. Really good. There's something about this All Blacks kicking game I'm thinking about all week, right? Because like last week against England and the week before, I've been kind of really quite critical of the All Blacks for not kicking enough. And I think we're making the same complaint here. And Mark over on 2 Cents Rugby made the exact opposite complaint. And I thought it was really interesting that he was saying, well, why are we trying to play this kicking game? Why are we leaning to being a kicking team when we're the All Blacks? Why don't we just go back to the All Black DNA? And I've been thinking about this because I kind of think we're making the same point. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and it doesn't sound that way, but like...
The same observations, but with different perspectives on them.
Yeah. One of us coming very much from like an All Black point of view, someone that grew up, as Mark did, like as an All Black fan.
Yeah.
And then, us as like dirty Northern Hemisphere pig dogs. And I think ultimately, the thing about this All Blacks team is they don't know who they are.
Yeah.
Scott Robertson has accidentally built a pressure and power team when he's trying to build a classic All Blacks team. And there's something about the All Black brand and the All Black badge that makes you think they need to play like that 1905 team that played the match of the century against that Welsh team, that plays in the style of the 87 team and the 2015 team, of those sides who chuck the ball about, whose forwards played with this skill you've never seen before. And so you're encouraged to keep the ball in hand. And Scott Robertson has built a team where their biggest strengths, they've got the maul, which finally we saw again, which we haven't been seeing for some time. Jason Ryler's drilled that pack, drilled that scrum, drilled that maul incredibly well. You've got an outstanding kicking game, and yet they're not approaching it they're not using it because they're so caught up in this idea of the other thing. And it kind of feels to me like the All Blacks needs to almost decide one way or the other.
Yeah.
They need to decide between the two tenets of the All Black brand, right? It's not the fern, it's winning and the style of play. And they kind of need to decide between which one do they value more at the moment. Like, do they value being the most dominant team in the world? Because they could, if they were executing properly, I think probably be the number 2 team in the world at the minute.
Yeah.
England, I say currently are. I think they could easily climb, well, not easily, but they could be better than them if...
Look at the squad, of course they can.
Yeah. If they were playing into the hands of it. However, I think they're too do we go which way do we go? And so you're ending up in this team that is sort of just lost.
No man's land, innit?
Yeah, and I'm really confused watching them because I kind of want to do a deep dive, once we can use footage in 2 weeks' time, on this All Black identity crisis that's going on.
Watch this space.
Because I don't think they're a flawed team. I think they're a very good team who are getting in their own way.
Yeah.
And either they need to really commit to restructuring this team to be an attacking team, or they need to restructure it to be a kicking team, which they're closer to at the minute.
I know what you mean, because sometimes in that middle third, you can see the little bit of indecision of what do we want to do? Do we want to just go all out attack here and go, classic All Black style? If we're going to kick, it's going to be a low, flat crossfield kick like Bowden Barrett does all the time, rather than sticking it in the air. Because actually, we've got a team who are really good on that kind of attack, you know?
An indecisive All Blacks team almost feels like an oxymoron.
It does. It does.
And yet, here we are. That is how you would describe
together.
this team.
And yet,
they are very, very good when they do get going.
Yes.
And that last 20 minutes, they were pretty much on fire.
And once again, this ties into a little bit of what I was saying earlier, when you give them opportunities, what they can do. Because when they are close to the try line, they are just exceptional. Wales have this real issue with discipline, and it's been a problem all autumn, but especially in this game. And now, it's so easy for us as Welsh fans to sit back and just go, just don't give away penalties.
Yeah.
Now, you have to question, why are they giving away penalties? The answer is because the All Blacks' power game is exceptional.
Yeah.
The All Blacks are overpowering them. They are getting more dominant carries, which means it's harder to roll away. You sometimes get impatient and try and go for jackals that aren't on. It also means sometimes you're having to go for soak-up tackles, which means you don't know whether or not you're entitled to go for the ball, and so you only know when the referee's put her whistle to her mouth, whether or not you're entitled to go for that, at which point it's too late.
I also think
if you dominate these tackles, these collisions, you are always in the ascendancy. You will get these decisions. You know, you will get things going in your favour. It's Wales's fault they couldn't front up to the All Blacks and had to just resort to giving away stupid penalties as a consequence.
I also think that cap count comes in massively.
Of course it does.
Which is the more times you've been in that situation, the more times you make the right decision.
Yeah.
And Wales had a team and a pack who were very inexperienced. And so you had a lot of players who have not been put under that kind of pressure. And it wasn't pressure. It wasn't like when they play South Africa in a week's time where they can't physically live with it, right? It's they're on the back foot, but they can adjust there and they can cover that. And we saw they had a few passages where they would go 10 phases of really solid defence, and then you'd have a player, usually it was Tony Plumtree, coming in the side and just giving away a dumb penalty or just stepping offside.
Yeah.
And they were, time after time, really preventable penalties. And it didn't help that Wales did not choose to contest the ruck, other than Tame Plumtree kept throwing himself into them. Clearly it felt like a tactic to leave bodies on the feet. Like, I've never seen Harry Deeves go for that few jackal attempts.
Yeah.
He's almost someone that's in on every single ball. And yet, Wales were standing off, they weren't contesting the breakdown, they were leaving it, bodies on the floor. Likewise, they didn't seem to be contesting the line out, they wanted people there set for a maul or set to work out into the defensive line. And that gave the All Blacks a lot of ball to work with, but it also meant they could be slightly more aggressive while we was in defence. I really like an adjustment they've made, so we've talked about the Tandy defence a few times over the last few weeks, which same system Scotland ran with him and still are running, of you come up really aggressively at first and then you fade off. They added something this week that I really like, which is Adam Beard's role. So Adam Beard is now flying out a line a la Ebenezer in the South African system, but they're running the rest of the defence there. So I think it's a really, really smart adjustment that Scotland were never doing. And again, it's something I was saying last week when Scotland played the All Blacks. They're unable to change momentum based on their defence, because they're not making big shots. Adam Beard isn't going to make a big shot, but he's going to get in the eye line. So he is flying up to just try and get in the eye line.
He's the lankiest player.
Time. Yeah.
You've got to work around him.
And this threw the All Blacks off a couple of times, but they couldn't get that tip on him because they had the tallest man in Wales flying at them. And I just like Luke Charteris is on holiday. I just thought it was like a really interesting innovation. The All Blacks did adjust to it plenty. And also, like, you make him make one tackle and he's not getting up the following phase, right? He's not even that better. He doesn't have that kind of work rate. As high as it is and as impressive as it is. But the All Blacks adjusted really well. That last quarter, Wales felt quite tired and it felt like they couldn't find a way to impose themselves on the game. They were physically able to get off the ground and make the tackles. It wasn't like, you look Tonga against Scotland where they were falling off tackles suddenly.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that. But they couldn't find a way to stop the momentum. They couldn't find a way to kind of like win the ball back, create that Hitler-turn momentum. And the All Blacks, when you give them momentum, they are so ruthless.
That's it. Consequences after this power game milks out penalties from this Welsh team who are panicking and just scrambling for the ball back. Consequences, Tamati Williams crashing over from short range, clinical, of course he's going to. Ruben Love scoring a try that if they were 20 metres further out, maybe he wouldn't have scored, maybe the cover would have got there in time. Sevu Reece, obviously Wales do a really good job defending the last phase of this, making the ball bounce here, but it just takes Sevu Reece absolutely filthy step on Jared Evans to get on the outside here and finish this try. But if there's 20 more metres here, they might have a catch-up defender who gets across and pushes them into touch.
They get this right? They put pressure on the pass, causing it to be bounced. They don't give any time to the passer. And then they buys the time for Jared Evans to get across. And then Sevu Reece is just brilliant footwork, right?
It's outstanding.
You play a team with this calibre, and they will have the odd player who can do that.
Bullshit moments.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. And finally, the other Sevu Reece try, I love the setup of this, and it's typical of what the All Blacks are like in the 22 as a team. So they go to the tail of this line out and they get Duplessis Kerifi to carry here. He's an exceptional ball carrier, has a really good upper body strength. And what I love about this, very similar to what we see Adi Savia doing in this role all the time, he goes for the basketball offload over the top. And what I like is, just before he does this, the movement of Samisoni Takiaho, who has just thrown the ball in, and he's very, very quick both on and off the ball. He moves as far in field as he physically can. Finlay Christie gets the ball and feeds it to him. He manages to brush off the tackle of Nick Tompkins. Max Llewellyn has to fold in to do a good job to finish him off here, which means they're under the sticks. One phase into this attack, they're under the posts. At this point, as a Welsh defence, you don't know where to defend because both of your centres are on the floor. Your fly half's having to make a guess of where they're going to go because it's mostly on me. Wingers marking each touchline. Fullback has to probably take a guess, as does the scrum half, on where to go. Your fastest players, you want to be able to fill the field with these. Whereas the All Blacks, the ball's in their court. They can decide what they're doing. The ball's not literally in their court. The ball's very much in the Welsh court. But Damien McKenzie can make the choice to go for a swing here back to the blind side. And what I love is Rico Ioane's movement here. He moves completely laterally. It's a really unselfish line by Ioane because he doesn't want the ball yet. He lets Will Jordan instead advance and take up that space, knowing he can create an extra man, he can create a man's advantage in this line. Will Jordan hits that line really hard, catches the ball well, and passes it to Rico Ioane, as I say, still moving laterally, straightens up as soon as he catches the ball, who then fixes it. Leonard Brown manages to put Sevu Reece in the corner. It is so clinical from the All Blacks. But as I say, that movement of both Kirifi carrying in midfield and Tokiaho to move to get towards splitting that Welsh backline, it's absolutely outstanding. It's something that the All Blacks are so good at. It's just identifying these opportunities when they get into the 22 and being able to just single out the key decision makers in each defence and make life just so difficult to work around the things that we do associate with the All Blacks, this passing game.
Yeah. Really weird year for the All Blacks. Kind of fitting note for it to end on. Broadly positive, but you kind of come out of it going, is something rotten in the state of Denmark? Like, is something going on here? Like, what's quite here? You know, like, should they have been pushed that hard by Wales, this Welsh team? But nonetheless, 50
They got 50 points, yeah.
You know, the results on the board for the All Blacks, 3 losses over the calendar year. International rugby is competitive, that isn't that bad. And yet there is a sort of stench off them of like, how good are they? We can't really tell. What's your general reflection on the All Blacks 2025? In a nutshell, immediately as we wrap it up.
I don't think it's as disastrous as a lot of Kiwi fans would justifiably think it is.
Yes.
Because they are used to utter world domination and then being the one team in the fight.
Yeah.
And I completely understand. It's weird to adjust to being a part of the machine that is competitive international rugby at the moment. However, you look at a performance like that, and as I say, they were clinical when they got into the 22. You know, that their conversion rate when they got chances was utterly outstanding. And even the ones that they didn't score was moments that went to the TMO and they were unlucky to get, tries disallowed because they had one fumble of the ball or one technical penalty or something like that. A lot of the time, those will go their way in future. It's just a part of the game. Yeah. So, it's a weird one because they will want it to be a lot better than it is at the moment. And I think that is a question that we will answer a little bit more fully if we do this video on where the All Blacks kind of, not where they are at the moment, but as you say, this identity crisis of where they probably think they need to be in a year's time. I think that's the more important question than where they are now. And how about you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with what you've just said, and I think we've covered it pretty well. Wales?
The main thing that matters is Harry Deeves and Morgan Morse and Brodie Coughlin all have caps now. Yeah. And they've all faced the hacker and all played really well.
Deevesy was excellent. Yeah. Deevesy was great. Morgan Morse came on and made a real impact. Brodie Coughlin didn't get enough minutes, but I thought he did what he could with the time he had.
What I think really sums up where Wales are at the moment and this whole thing about identity is there was a moment about 20 minutes into the game where Wales got a penalty and Dan Edwards put a stonking kick into the corner and he was barking the orders of everybody. And I genuinely at that moment just thought I don't care if Dan Edwards, if all he does for the rest of the game is make errors, I'm happy because he looks confident. He looks like he's controlling the ship. It looks like he's in charge and he's on his 4th start of international rugby. Yeah. And he's right at the start of his career and he looks confident and cocky. And Wales need a fly off like that and have done since Dan Biggar retired. Yeah. So the fact that they have that means that you can see a vision. There is somebody that Wales can drive that through. And I don't care if he plays shit in his next 5 caps for Wales, just because as far as I'm concerned, as long as he is in charge, he is in control, I don't care. He can be whatever player he wants to be because he will have belief in himself, and I love that. It's what fly-off needs.
It feels like Wales this autumn are starting to find a lot of the pieces they were missing. Yeah. I feel like I really see what Tandy's building. I really like it. I really like the energy that's coming in. I think we talked about that top 5 earlier, right? You then got the next seed down, the next group, kind of Argentina, Australia, Italy, Scotland. And I would have said before this game that I thought Wales were then in the next group down, which is Japan, Georgia, them, Fiji. I think this game made me feel like Wales are instead the worst team with the next group up, rather than in that next group down.
Obviously, the Six Nations will tell on that.
The Six Nations will tell, and it's a one-off game. But this felt like a performance you can build on in the way that Ireland game didn't. The Ireland game felt like a bullshit one-off. Even at the time, you're kind of like, we're not going to do this next week. We'll get battered by Scotland next week. This was a one-off. Yeah. This was just things coming together and a good feel-good factor because Gatland was now gone. This felt like the start of Wales moving back up. It felt like, as I said, them rebooting to where they were 3 or 4 years ago.
You saying we're officially back up? No, we're getting back up. We're climbing back up.
I now look at it and I see a Wales team that can be competitive in a few years' time, where before I thought we were waiting a decade and we had a generation of players treading water and a few players like Jack Morgan, like Dan Edwards, frankly, like Dewi Lake in particular, like who will have a really tough World Cup of it, you know, will be like the kind of Howleys and Quinnells of past who arrived too late and too early for the glory days either side.
So my main takeaway from this game is that quite casual fans in New Zealand of rugby, of international rugby. So nobody who will be watching this video, because the sort of people who watch our funny videos on the internet actually really love rugby and are diehard fans.
Or hate referees.
Which, yeah, they love rugby. They pretend to love rugby, but they actually love to hate rugby.
They just love to be angry.
Anyway, most likely, none of the people watching this video, but the casual New Zealand rugby fan, the player of the decade that they will associate with Welsh rugby, that they'll be like, oh yeah, that guy who's really good, that guy that you've got, it won't be Jack Morgan, it won't be Thomas Williams, they'll remember the name Tom Rogers. And I find that really funny and like generally just great, because I like Tom Rogers, because he's grafted.
Harry Deves, because what a man.